Hello and welcome back to the Sam Beast YouTube channel. My name is David Foxen, and I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last 2 years or so, hardware asset management has had a huge resurgence. If you haven't implemented it yet, why not? What are you doing? If you need any further support or justification, here are my top 5 reasons for implementing hardware asset management. Roll the credits. Okay, so number 1 on my list is data transparency. If you haven't got hardware asset management in place within your organization, how are you going to know what assets you're using? How are you going to know where they are, who's got them, whether they're coming towards the end of life, whether they need repairs? How are you going to populate your asset management database or your CMDB? Implementing hardware asset management can bring all of that accurate hardware data to life and help you enable to make ITAM and hardware asset management a key decision maker within your organization. The AMDB asset management database is like your central repository. We'll do another video on the AMDB versus CMDB argument. But you need to be able to build up an accurate AMDB so that you can do ITAM and hardware asset management effectively. Sales point number 1, data transparency and visibility. Number 2 on the list is governance and control. You know I'm a massive process man and policy man here. I love them. I think they're the foundations for any IT asset management function. Without hardware asset management processes and controls in place, how are you actually going to manage the asset throughout its life cycle? Even if you've got the data visibility and that transparency, how are you going to make sure that you're running the right models? That assets that are coming up for hardware refresh are refreshed in time, that you've got people only requesting approved models within your estate. What happens if people start bringing in their own devices and connect them to the network? How are you going to control that without the right process and control in place? Another big argument for hardware asset management is getting those processes and control in place, because ultimately, and remember this, hardware asset management plays a key role in the customer experience for your end users. How long it takes them to receive an asset they've requested, whether they can loan one, whether it's got all of the configuration and setup required for it. You cannot successfully repeat this process again and again without having those dedicated controls in place. So that is my number 2 argument for implementing HAM. In at number 3, but still really important, and another reason for implementing hardware asset management is that relationship with information security or InfoSec. If you've got legacy hardware assets out there, they may be an open door for malware, spyware, hackers, viruses, whatever it may be. If they are not patched correctly, they will be a backdoor. How can HAM help with this? Well, by implementing processes like making sure that your assets are connected to the network every 30 days is a fantastic starting point. This not only helps you get an accurate inventory report, but it helps information security push all of their patches and updates that are currently already being pushed out to active assets that have been connected to the network. It's also a fantastic way for you to make sure that you're building up that relationship with a key stakeholder like InfoSec. So that is by far number 3 on the list. Okay, let's go with the 4th reason. And this is all about lifecycle management, but also with a bit of finances thrown in there. Making sure that you're buying the correct model of hardware with the correct specification, right the way through to how you're actually going to manage that asset throughout its life cycle. How are you going to deploy it? Are you going to asset tag it? How are you going to track it when you've then provisioned it to the user? How are you then going to check that the user's actually adhering to the IT asset acceptable use policy or your HAM policy? How are you going to make sure they're following the right processes? It kind of coincides with point 2 and 3 on the processes and InfoSec support, but the lifecycle management is so important when managing hardware assets. Some of these assets, let's not forget, are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds when you're looking at the infrastructure space. Easy for me to say. There's also that financial element of it. Are you tracking the depreciation values? If you're writing something off, are you writing off the depreciated value or the original purchase value of the asset? When you're reclaiming assets through proactive hardware asset management, How are you tracking that? What finances are you going to claim as a cost avoidance or a cash savings when you go and resell it on, for example? And then you just have to look at the disposal, the end of life, and the IT asset disposition process. You may be able to get some money back for your assets. If it's end of life, you can't donate it, you don't want to donate it, you can't reuse it. There are ITAD companies that will refurbish that device and give you rebate back for it. They may even look at the materials and the components within the device, recycle them, and give you money back for it. Sometimes, depending on the amount of assets you're actually sending off for refurbishment or recycling, HAM or ITAM can actually start to become a bit of a profit center as you mitigate all of the costs for the collection, the grading and the refurbishment for the value of the asset or the materials that you're recycling or selling on. So that is number 4 in the reasons as to why you should implement HAM. Life cycle management and trying to get some money out of those assets even when you don't need them anymore. And finally, number 5. You cannot do software asset management without hardware asset management. If you don't know what physical assets you've got out there, what the specification of them are, how are you going to proactively, effectively and legally license things like Windows Server, SQL, SAP, Oracle, IBM, Salesforce, all of these different applications that have licensing metrics that relate to the hardware that they're residing on. If you haven't got your hardware asset management function in place, up and running, have that visibility, remember point 1, visibility and transparency of data, how do you know that you're compliant? How do you know you're not, in fact, over-licensed and wasting loads of money on software licenses that you don't actually need? Or, vice versa, that you're not under-licensed? You won't know that unless you do hardware asset management in conjunction with software asset management, and that makes ITAM. So, number 5 on the list, should you have needed it being spelt out for you, is the relationship between hardware asset management and software asset management. Okay, so that was a very quick top 5 reasons for implementing hardware asset management. I really hope you found it useful. Whilst you're here, please like and subscribe if you think that it's useful or you enjoyed the content. And we hope to see you again here at the Sam Beast YouTube channel.